extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Every time we vote, we're standing up side by side with the Founding Fathers, with the men of Valley Forge, with patriots and pioneers throughout our history, with all those who dedicated their lives to making this a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Elections are the lifeblood of our democracy. They are the mechanism by which the American people choose who is going to rule on their behalf and for their interests and welfare. Without elections, there would be no way for the American people, for us, to exercise our legitimate sway on the future direction of this country.
Polls now closed in half the country, and we are getting some interesting results coming in from those battleground states.
If you're a Republican, you say, wow. If you're a Democrat, you say, uh-oh.
So you see Donald Trump is now starting to widen his lead. President Trump now with 54% of the vote.
The president right now has the lead in the Keystone State.
We're going to have a great night, and we're going to have, much more importantly, we're going to have a great 4 years.
The 2020 election haunts the American mind.
Here's where it gets really bizarre. At Fulton County, most populous county, it is Atlanta, they just stopped counting.
Nevada, meanwhile, has stopped counting votes.
They've all stopped counting for the night?
All right, welcome back. This is CNN's special live coverage, 10:31 a.m. on the East Coast. Why am I giving you the time? Well, if you managed to sleep last night, things changed. You may have gone to bed thinking this election was headed one way, and then you woke up and you saw things were different.
Also overnight, Joe Biden pulled ahead in the state of Georgia.
Joe Biden takes the lead in Pennsylvania.
Okay, we have an announcement to make.
Joe Biden has run for president 3 times, and the 3rd time has turned out to be the charm.
One side insists it was the most secure election in U.S. history.
Let me begin with one immutable fact. The 2020 election was the most secure election in American history.
It was the cleanest election, the safest election, the most secure election ever run.
And make no mistake, there has been no evidence of any significant widespread voter fraud.
Let me say it again.
The 2020 election was the most secure
election in American history.
Period.
This same side accuses anyone who disagrees with them of perpetrating a big lie
or the big delusion.
The big lie keeps getting repeated.
The big lie is just that, a big lie.
And despite a relentless media barrage, the other side remains convinced there was widespread election fraud.
What I saw was not a secure and transparent election.
Poll watchers claim the Travis County Clerk's Office is locking them out.
Last night, there was a major software glitch that actually delayed the counting of all of the ballots.
A look at election fraud, and I want to look at secretaries of state who illegally changed the voter laws without the permission of their state legislature.
There have been numerous attempts to prove election fraud.
A van dropping off ballots in the early morning hours of November 4th, 8 hours past the deadline.
She said her mother was in a nursing home and did not have the mental capacity to vote.
We've obtained video tonight that shows a man dropping several ballots into a drop box.
Scottsdale woman pleads guilty to casting a ballot in her dead mother's name.
Shows a man buying a registration form for an absentee ballot from a voter, giving him, quote, pocket money, unquote, of $200.
Yet courts have refused to consider these cases on the merits.
The Supreme Court rejecting an effort by Republicans to reverse President-elect Joe Biden's win in Pennsylvania.
The Supreme Court has rejected the Texas-led effort to toss out election results in 4 key states.
Even some Republicans dismiss the idea of systematic fraud and call for us to move on.
Fraud did not play a role in the outcome of the election.
The election was fair as we've seen. We simply did not win the election as Republicans for the presidency.
Rather than reject what happened on the 6th, reject the lies about the election, and make clear that a president who engaged in those activities can never be president again.
But we can't move on unless we know the truth. Many other issues arise out of the 2020 election. Did the January 6th protesters go to D.C. to mount an insurrection? It wasn't an insurrection, it was a primal scream.
To protect the Constitution of the United States against enemies foreign and domestic!
They wanted their elected leaders to adjudicate the claims of election fraud. The left's claim that this was the most secure election is also the foundation for the widespread censorship on social media of the so-called big lie.
This morning, President Trump waking up without his favorite megaphone.
You will never again see a tweet from President Trump.
But is it a big lie? Is it a lie at all?
Yeah. Rolling. Sound speed. All right. Everybody got me? Yep. All right. SRP.
Ready? Set. Hey, I'm Dinesh D'Souza, and this is Season 1, Episode 1 of my new podcast. I started my podcast in early 2021 to speak the truth. But by simply asking questions about election fraud, you get booted from YouTube and Facebook. My podcast is sponsored by Salem Media, and I knew that other Salem hosts felt my frustration. Larry Elder, Dennis Prager, Eric Metaxas, Sebastian Gorka, Charlie Kirk. Let me begin by asking a very simple question. Do we feel confident or comfortable that we know the truth about what really happened in the 2020 election?
I'm agnostic on this question, and I am awaiting more information.
What about you, Eric?
I think Dennis is a coward. I think, no, honestly, it's almost funny to me you say you're agnostic. And I think most Americans know that we don't know what happened and are not okay with that, by the way.
I'm supposed to believe that a man who didn't campaign or campaign from his basement got more votes than the first black president in America? I don't believe it.
Charlie?
We have crumbs. We have some evidence here and there, but the picture is far from complete.
Larry, in your race, you were asked straight out, right? Do you believe that the 2020 election was stolen? What was your answer, and do you abide by that answer as of right now?
My answer was that Donald Trump is in Mar-a-Lago, and Joe Biden is in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The lawsuits did not succeed. Do I believe there was shenanigans? Do I believe there were irregularities? Absolutely, and said so. This is probably the most loathed president I've ever seen. I thought Richard Nixon was loathed. I thought George W. Bush was loathed because of the Iraq War. I've never seen the level of vitriol against this man every single day. I think there was a study that found 91% of the news of ABC, NBC, CBS nightly news against Donald Trump was negative. dogged by a bogus 2.5-year collusion investigation. And then on the eve of the election, this Hunter Biden story drops, which shows that Joe Biden completely lied about his lack of knowledge of what his son was doing, and it was suppressed. And even the CEO of Twitter later on admitted that it was suppressed and shouldn't have been. That alone would have altered the election. You add all that up, my point is, this man is so loathed, I wouldn't put it past the Democrats to do virtually anything to make sure he doesn't get another 4 years.
If I believed the president were a Nazi, I might steal an election.
If we were Germans in the 1930s, we'd steal the election from Hitler if we could.
If I'm that indoctrinated, of course I can justify it.
I think it was Jane Fonda who said that COVID was God's gift to the left, right? It wrecks the empirical positives of the Trump economy, but here's the other. It enables a whole bunch of things on the other side to change the rules of the election. So the point is, in a COVID environment, is it not conceivable that Trump could have lost fair and square?
I think millions of Americans know something went wrong, and they have little pieces, and no one's really put it together. They know that there was injustice. They know it in their gut. They know it through the bellwether counties where Donald Trump won almost every single one of the predictive counties that show who's going to be president. And then they also know it where they went to bed thinking Trump was going to have 4 more years, and they woke up with the exact opposite.
We have an individual who could fill a stadium with 60,000 supporters in 24 hours. Vice an individual, you know the famous photograph of the 6 empty circles at a Biden rally. We have an incumbent president who received more votes than any other incumbent president in American history, who actually got 10 million more votes than he did 4 years prior, and who received more support after 4 years of being called a racist and a white supremacist, more support from the Hispanic and black community than any Republican president since the 1960s. And he was beaten by a machine politician who couldn't speak clearly, who on the campaign stage would confuse his sister with his wife. It just stinks.
Now, is it possible that the very success of Republicans down ballot, I'm talking about Republicans running for the House, running for the Senate, running for other races, the fact that the Republicans as a party did pretty well, but Trump lost, doesn't that work the other way and undercut the idea that there was systematic fraud?
It's an anomaly. Because if he really, when a president really loses, he has tails. What is it called?
Coattails.
Coattails. And the down ballots lose. But they won. Why didn't they cheat on all of those? Why didn't they cheat in Virginia with Youngkin?
And who's to say they didn't cheat? Not all attempts at cheating succeed.
You're right.
One other question. In the Republican Party, I keep hearing people who seem annoyed at the revisiting of the 2020 election. Their attitude appears to be, let bygones be bygones. Let's just move on.
I think the reason that many Republicans are saying let's move on is because bold accusations require bold evidence, and they haven't seen it.
And because they know how vulnerable they are and how much they're going to be bashed.
Well, yeah, you're called a sore loser. You're called a conspiracy theorist.
The people who say that, let's move forward, are people in the elite who see Donald Trump as an anomaly.
You will not win in any district in this country because you have said that the 2020 election was a fraud. And if they can't win on this issue, then don't use it.
Well, it doesn't have to be the only issue, but their unwillingness even to speak up about it, I think, is despicable.
Show me the proof, and I'll bet you they do speak up, just like I will speak more. And I'm not running for office. But I have not gone on board of, I know for a fact this was a fraud.
Show me the money.
And in the words of Warner Wolf, let's go to the videotape.
Now look, I mean, the Democrats, they have a history of voter fraud. Going back to Tammany Hall in the 19th century, we fast forward to LBJ stealing his first race in Texas. John F. Kennedy, the allegations that he stole the presidency with voter fraud in Texas and in Illinois.
They've done it before.
I mean, you can have someone who has a criminal record and they're fully capable of robbing a bank, but did they rob the bank?
Well, it looks like it.
What does our friend Catherine think about all this?
Catherine's been a little quiet, but I think that means that they're working on something. I think that you should give her a call and see what she thinks.
Hi, I'm Catherine Engelbrecht, founder and president of True the Vote.
Hey Dinesh, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Hey, listen, I'm here with Debbie.
Hey, Catherine.
Hey, Debbie.
You know how crazy it is out there. Have you guys been digging into this whole issue of voter fraud?
Well, we have been working on something big. It's probably best we don't discuss it over the phone, but can we meet? I've been working with Greg Phillips. I don't know if I've ever introduced him to you, but he has a deep background in election intelligence. He's worked projects all over the world. He's a massive 30-year experience. We decided to test a hypothesis, and we went really big. And now we have something that we think you're going to really want to see. So I'll send you the address separately.
Now, Greg Phillips, what's your background that prepares you for this kind of work?
I've been in and around election intelligence and integrity for about 40 years. We've done investigations literally all over the world. It's a combination of data acquisition, data analysis, occasionally some in-depth data mining. Our ability to draw meaningful conclusions that link the who to the when to the where is significant in the space.
Catherine, you started the group called True the Vote in the year 2010. What was your mission or objective?
We just didn't have enough volunteers working at the polls in our local elections. So we began by training people to work in the polls, and then as we got further into it, we recognized, wow, some of the problems you see at the polls can be attributed to problems in the voter rolls. Well, what can we do about the voter rolls? And so it turned into something much bigger than we had anticipated.
True the Vote has the largest store of election intelligence for the 2020 elections in the world. No one has more data than we do.
So I started True the Vote to ensure that every American voter has an opportunity to participate in elections.
I think I became familiar with your work when you gave congressional testimony. Now, that was in the year 2014. In fact, I met you through Debbie, and I think what's interesting is that you not only have known Debbie for years, but you trained her. And
Absolutely. I was a bilingual poll watcher.
Oh, yes.
So my Spanish language came in very handy. I was a poll watcher in Rosenberg, and the poll judge was telling this couple that came in Spanish who to vote for. And of course, she didn't really realize that I knew Spanish, and so there we go.
And you busted them.
I busted them.
Yeah. So, Catherine, when you set up True the Vote, you set it up not so much, it's not a partisan organization. Is that because you saw shenanigans, problems with voting as coming out of both parties?
Oh, absolutely. Plus, we need parity of parties at the polls.
Well, you told me about this remarkable election in which you had vote harvesting and vote trafficking, but it was on behalf of a Republican candidate.
Exactly. In North Carolina, it was unique in that it actually overturned an election.
There's going to be a new election in the North Carolina congressional district engulfed in a scandal over voting fraud.
This all centers around allegations that an operative for Harris then hired a team of people to harvest absentee ballots, paying them between $2 and $3 a vote.
So you have an activist, the guy's name was McCrae Dowless, and he worked for the Bladen Improvement Association, which was a kind of an African-American, get voters to the polls, but apparently they were doing all kinds of vote harvesting, and he learned the strategy. Then he broke with them, and he took his services to Mark Harris, a Republican, well, actually a pastor who was running.
Correct.
And Harris won. He pulled it off.
In 40 years of doing this, we've seen this over and over again. Sometimes the schemes are a little bit different. Sometimes it's people out banging on doors, gathering ballots. Sometimes the ballots are sent here, gathered here, deposited there. But the trafficking itself is always the same basic pattern. There's a nonprofit involved somewhere in the middle. There are people that are either collecting those ballots on the one hand or depositing those ballots on the other and getting paid for it.
In no case is it acceptable to be paid for your ballot or to accept some form of remuneration for your ballot. And in no way, in no time, is that legal.
I noticed, Catherine, that in the immediate aftermath of the election, when there were a lot of accusations and charges flying around, all reflecting these suspicions of something went deeply wrong, charges of foreign intervention, charges of machines, you and your organization were kind of dead silent. I got the impression that you were looking for a different approach.
Given the outliers that were introduced in such a major way in 2020, namely the privately funded drop boxes, the mass mail out of ballots, the hypothesis was if you were going to cheat, how might one go about this? That would be provable, trackable, traceable.
You said there might be some, let's just call them bad actors, who are delivering ballots systematically and illicitly to these mail-in drop boxes, and there might be a way to track them and to bust them.
We didn't know. We decided we were going to let the data tell the tale, and we collected together a team of highly skilled contractors and put together a plan to see where the data would take us.
What, Greg, is geo-tracking?
So the idea is to collect the signals that are emitted from your phone. Your cell phone is delivering information to apps that are collecting that ping. So there are 4 key coordinates: the lat long, the elevation, and the time. And with that data, we can then build a pattern of life around you. So that phone's here right now. Well, where's it going to be at 5 o'clock? And where's it going to be tonight?
Well, here's my cell phone. My cell phone is off. Can I be geo-tracked even with the cell phone being off?
Possibly.
Depending on the apps that are on the phone.
Depending on
That's what marketing companies do all day, every day.
Now, this is the point. We were at the Apple store and at CVS, and on both occasions, they knew where you were evidently.
Absolutely.
And they were telling you about specials, and they were, so people have experience of this.
There's 300,000 or so apps that gather that data, and then they sell it to brokers.
Isn't it also true that this geo-tracking has now become a vital tool for the military, for the intelligence agencies, and for law enforcement?
Indeed, they're using it almost every day. I'll say that there's no question amongst anyone that I know in the community that many, if not all, of the people that were involved in the situation at the Capitol on January 6th were being tracked previous to January 6th, because they already knew what their pattern of life was. They already knew who to look at.
Many of the people who stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th left digital footprints that law enforcement has used in making arrests.
You're saying they must have known about these people before, because some of those guys were arrested 1 day, 3 days, 5 days after January 6th, and that's not enough time to do the geo-tracking analysis.
The very idea that you could go from the afternoon of January 6th to acquiring the data, tracking the data, unmask who actually owns that phone, which the government is required to do, and then get it to a grand jury, make an arrest in 72 hours?
Impossible.
It's not possible. They had to have been tracking the people in advance. But the fact of the matter is, these techniques are used every single day by law enforcement, the intelligence community, the Department of Defense.
Was geo-tracking part of the way that the CIA was able to identify bin Laden?
It certainly played a role. It's even more sophisticated today than it was when bin Laden was disposed of. More and more apps are participating in this program, if you will.
The reliability of geo-tracking is not substantially different from the reliability of a fingerprint or the reliability of DNA. If it identifies your phone, now I could have given my phone to Debbie, but the simple truth of it is my phone was there on this particular date, and there's absolutely no question about that, right?
That's correct.
Now, you decided to purchase through these brokers that make this information available to companies, they make it available all kinds of places to buy data. Let's talk about the methodology. You identified data in certain places, and by and large you focused on the states where the election was decided. Tell us, what are the areas that you bought data for, and what were you looking for? And what's the time period?
October 1st through the election. In Georgia, we actually bought from October 1st through January 6th after the runoff. So we went in, We decided to do the Atlanta metro area because it picks up some rural areas, it picks up some urban areas, it picks up some suburban areas. 309 drop boxes in the area. And we thought, okay, well, this is a pretty good test. We, in essence, sort of fenced around those.
Geofencing, so-called.
Geofencing. And then we were able to make purchase of data of people that had been near those drop boxes, but also near the organizations. Across the country, we bought 10 trillion signals.
When they give you this data that you then have to go through, what does this data look like?
Well, it's a massive data transfer. We have more than a petabyte of data. You're talking about transacting hundreds of terabytes, so it's a significant move of data.
You have 10 trillion signals, that's a lot of signals. So what was the criterion that you set?
Final decision was they had to have been to 10 or more drop boxes, meaning unique visits inside of a space, and 5 or more visits to one or more of these organizations.
Those were the outliers. It was such an aberrant pattern.
So what you're saying, I mean, it seems to me there's no reason for someone to go to even 2 drop boxes, but you're saying that maybe there's a conceivable reason someone did that. Let's identify a large number of drop boxes and multiple trips, and that way we're going to catch not all the offenders, right, but the worst offenders.
The way we would describe it is we want to absolutely ensure that we don't have false positives, meaning including people that should not have been included. We're not in any way saying that this is all there is. We're just saying that based on our criteria that we identified in Atlanta, 242 people that went to an average of 24 drop boxes in 8 organizations during a 2-week period.
242 mules. Now let's pause for a second. What is a mule?
When we started the project, we had to figure out how are we going to describe the individuals and the elements involved. And to us, it felt a lot like a cartel. It felt a lot like trafficking. It can be trafficking in drugs, trafficking in humans. In this instance, it's ballot trafficking, and so we began to use that vernacular. A mule is, by our definition, a person that is involved in picking up ballots from locations and running them to the drop boxes. So you have the collectors on the one hand, you have the stash houses, which are the nonprofits, and then you have the mules that are doing the drops.
What do we know about them? Who are they?
Well, first let me say, this is not grandma out walking her dog. Bad backgrounds, bad reputations. We've had, encounters with several that are, not terribly positive.
Violent guys.
Can be. They are interested in one thing, that's money.
Do we know, by the way, how much they get paid?
According to the people that have shared information with us, it's generally $10 a ballot. In the Georgia runoff, that number was higher.
2020, of course, was the year of the Antifa riots, the BLM riots, and it was all going on in the months and weeks leading up to the election.
Right.
And so in the data, you have geo-tracking data of the drop boxes, but you also have data on the rioters.
There were several different violent BLM Antifa riots in Atlanta. In one of them, we had 36 of our mules participate in these violent riots. There's an organization that tracks the device IDs across all violent protests around the world. We took a look at our 242 mules in Atlanta, and sure enough, dozens and dozens and dozens of our mules show up on the ACLID databases. So again, this is not grandma out walking her dog. These are, violent criminals sometimes.
There's not just a criminal element, but there is an ideological element, and that there's an overlap between people. I mean, you're not going to go to an Antifa riot and find it overpopulated with patriots or Christians or Republicans. These are people on generally the far left. And turns out that these are people who also help to make up the mule population.
I think that's also borne out in our target organizations themselves. They're not like Republican organizations.
These are left-wing Democratic organizations, yeah. Let's zoom in here. So the mule is the delivery man.
The mule is the delivery
woman. And what you're saying is they have a starting point or multiple starting points, and then they have the end point. And the end point is the drop box.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
But you're saying that they get the ballots from somewhere, and then they go deposit them in multiple drop boxes.
One of the questions that will come up in the work that we've done is, well, how do you know that this wasn't just somebody that's got a big family and they just deposited a bunch of ballots once? Or how do you know that this person didn't just work at a location that is near a drop box and so they're constantly going by a drop box? And the elements that are additive here, the going to the nonprofits, the ability to identify the pattern of approach to a drop box, and that it is going not past a drop box and on, but directly to a drop box and back to another point and then to another drop box. All of these things.
I mean, isn't the timing significant? If some guy's going to a drop box at 2 a.m. in the morning, presumably he's not like out for a walk.
Right.
So we're going to show you a visual, a pattern of life that someone can see and look at rather than just a whole spreadsheet of numbers, being able to look at it in this manner. What you see here on the screen is a single person on a single day in Atlanta, Georgia. They went to 28 drop boxes in 5 organizations in one day.
What are the orange dots?
Those are drop boxes.
And what is the blue tracks?
That is a smoothed out pattern of life so that we could take the sort of the movement of the individual cell phone signals, marry them together into something that's visual so that you can see movement on the individual. To get to some of these drop boxes, you had to be intentional. You had to get off the highway, you had to go on surface streets, you had to turn in somewhere in order to get to those drop boxes.
And the circles, I take it, reflect the nonprofit centers. Are that the places where the ballots originate?
The stash houses, where the ballots are collected and handed to the mules to take to the drop boxes.
Now let's move over to Arizona. How many mules in Arizona?
A little over 200.
A little over 200.
In Phoenix alone.
The reason I think this is all very significant is because these were very close states, right? What was the margin in Georgia?
10 or 11,000, I think, in the end.
In the end.
And Arizona also extremely close.
Yeah, very close.
Then you moved on to
Wisconsin, but our initial look was in Milwaukee. Gross numbers were a little down, but the average number of visits to the drop boxes was up. So instead of having only 24 unique visits, I think we averaged 28.
I mean, maybe
Wisconsin.
I've heard people in Milwaukee are really hardworking, and maybe they just went overtime. And then let's go to Michigan.
We have more than 500 mules that we've identified in Michigan. Again, the number of boxes is lower.
Now, where in Michigan?
Detroit mainly, but we have people in Detroit that went to more than 100 drop boxes.
I mean, this is stunning because it's like, I cannot think of a rational, kind of innocent reason for someone to do that. It just doesn't exist.
No.
So any reasonable person would say, you're onto something big here.
We should take a closer look.
Let's go to Pennsylvania, critical state. I think it was Pennsylvania that really gave Biden the election.
Philadelphia alone, we've identified more than 1,100 mules at rates well beyond anything we'd seen. Closer to 50 drop boxes each.
Each guy going to 50 drop boxes?
Each. 1,100. We saw people driving back and forth to New Jersey across the bridge.
But you're saying the ballots may not even be from Philadelphia or from Pennsylvania.
We're saying somebody should
But you're
investigate.
saying that the origin point appears to be Jersey. Now, running 1,100 mules times 50, we are at 50,000 drop box visits by the mules alone in Philadelphia or greater Philadelphia area. Now, as you were assessing this data, you had, the two of you, and I'm not sure which of you came up with this, a genius idea in my view. It was your, of course, of course, who else? Well, to validate your data.
We chose to look at 2 murders that were ebbing on cold case status.
And in Atlanta, 8-year-old Sequoia Turner was killed by rounds of gunfire shot into a car. It happened just outside this Wendy's parking lot.
Bought the data and the team got to work.
You could see visually that there were only a handful of unique devices that could possibly have pulled the trigger. So this is the area, and this is where the Wendy's was.
And are you saying that each green dot is the same guy, but moving through time?
Each color is one person. The shooting actually occurred right here in this parking lot, sort of inside of this circle are really the only potentially legitimate shooters. Each of these devices has a unique device ID, and we turned the bulk of this information over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Now, I read, they've arrested 2 suspects.
They have.
2 suspected gang members will appear in court this morning on charges that include the shooting death of 8-year-old Sequoia Turner.
And isn't it true that this tracking, these movements, this parallels exactly the work you're doing with the Mules?
Exactly.
It's one thing to have the scientific evidence, which is persuasive on its own merits, but do you have video evidence?
We do.
How much of it do you have?
4 million minutes of surveillance video around the country.
Official surveillance video of these mail-in drop boxes?
Yes.
How do you get it?
You can file for open records requests. Any citizen can do this. It was a very difficult series of steps that had to be followed to procure the actual surveillance video.
Do you have video in Georgia?
We do.
Is it video from the presidential election, the runoff election, or both?
Both.
Do you have video from other states?
Some video from Arizona. We have recently learned video was specifically turned off on particular drop boxes.
In which state?
Arizona. Wisconsin, it turns out, even though the rules required them to have video.
Did they do the video?
No, they did not.
There should be video on every Dropbox.
Indeed.
Given today's kind of cost of technology, it would not have been that hard to do it. And you sent me a screenshot, Catherine, where you were requesting video, and I believe it was the state of Georgia saying this video does not exist, and we can't tell you why it doesn't exist.
Right, that was in Fulton County. We have correspondence like that from a lot of states. In the absence of video, and that geospatial data is key to decoding, what the greater scheme was. But in the case of what we're going to show you now, what kicks it up a notch is that we have the geospatial data to support the video.
Let's talk about some of the videos.
So we're going to show you a couple different ones. This particular individual we have in a number of different locations at a number of different times. He's actually a mule.
This is the official surveillance video of Georgia.
Absolutely.
And so as the person pulls up, they don't even bother parking. Of course, it's the middle of the night, so why would they? He gets out, approaches the box. When people walk up with intention to cheat, they look around, they basically walk fairly quickly, they try to stuff them in, they try to get out of there. In this case, he drops a few on the ground, pick them up, stuff them into the box. And then he hustles back and hustles out of there. So this is what it looks like. It doesn't necessarily look like, hundreds of ballots being stuffed in.
You don't need a whole lot of fraud, you just need a little in the right places over time.
Is there a way to estimate, or even roughly, how many ballots are being tossed into a box at a given time?
It might be 3 or 5 or 6 or 10 or something like that.
The idea is to stay under the radar. And as Greg said, the number is, 3, 5, 10 ballots. But then they're not done for the day either. They're going place to place to place, day upon day upon day. And so that will not show up in your chain of custody documents, your tracking documents that would identify a big blip.
I mean, they're not going up and dumping in, buckets full of ballots. On the other hand, we've seen circumstances where it appears that buckets full of ballots showed up. There's one box in Gwinnett County that had a chain of custody document with 1,962 ballots noted on this. And first of all, that's roughly 10 times what we normally see. We sorted through the geodata, found a few hundred people. Okay, well, that's pretty odd. We have video of all of this. And guess what it shows? 271 people approached that ballot drop box during that 25-hour period. 271. 1,962 ballots were deposited.
Wow. Here are election officials pulling out of that drop box 2 full duffel bags containing over 1,900 ballots. Let's look at another one.
Yeah, let's take a look at...
Interesting thing about this person is the device seems to live in South Carolina. So this person isn't even from Georgia. She was here during both election cycles, but is not a resident of the state.
But as she approaches the drop box, she never looks at the trash can, right?
She's looking the other way.
But the other thing she has is she has gloves on. What one of our analysts noticed was these surgical gloves only appeared from December 23rd forward in the runoff. So we didn't see a lot of them previous to December 23rd, and we couldn't figure out why. And then it just dawned on us, well, on December 22nd, there was an indictment handed down in Arizona for people that had stuffed ballots, and the way the FBI nailed them was fingerprints. And then lo and behold, the next day and days forward.
So this video is now from the Georgia runoffs. This is January of 21.
This particular one is at approximately 1 o'clock in the morning on January the 5th.
Stuffs her ballots in there. It's like a small stackish, maybe 3, maybe 4. Takes them off, and then puts them in a trash can that she never looked at.
So she knew it was there.
She knew it was there, right? And so we have her on a number of locations.
She's an out-of-state mule, and then this is in no way the only drop box that she attended.
That's right.
No, she's goes to dozens and dozens over the course of these 2 elections.
Who's next?
What you're gonna see is he approaches the drop box on his bike. He also has a backpack on. Pulled the ballots out of his backpack.
Taking his time.
Taking his time, digging around, looking for some ballots. Finally gets that, pulls them out. Okay, now I'm set. And he'll put them in. But you also see him get sort of frustrated as he starts to leave, because guess what? At this point, they had started requiring the mules, apparently, to take pictures of the stuffing of the ballots. It appears that that's how they get paid. So they take a picture, and stuff it in, they take a picture, not a selfie, but a picture of the actual ballot going in. But this guy gets frustrated, so he actually has to park his bike, get off.
So if you were there just casting your own ballot, what reason in the world would you have to come back and take a picture of the box?
And he kneels down.
Looking around.
Take some pictures.
Okay, the next one.
Yeah, so let me show you Dog Guy. So Dog Guy, middle of the day, this is actually at a polling place. So the people in line are waiting to go in and vote early. They're doing it the right way. Okay, now you've got some other people gonna walk up. This lady doesn't care, but this next guy cares. He's watching the whole thing. That guy looks up, talks to him.
Got the ballots under his arm already. Now he's got the rest that he pulled out of the bag.
And he's gonna get his camera ready to take the pictures as he puts them in there. If you consider the brazenness of this, right? This is the middle of the day. There's people sitting there watching you cheat. People that are doing it the right way.
But it's difficult for them to know what to do, except observe and maybe say, what's going on here? What did I just see?
They wonder, what does this all even mean if this is happening in broad daylight and nobody's doing anything to stop it?
And so these are the kind of things, 4 million minutes of this. This was an organized effort to subvert a free and fair election. This is organized crime. You can't look at this data in its aggregate and believe anything otherwise. That's especially true when you consider that in places like Georgia, it was only decided by 10,000, 12,000 votes. And you look at 5,000 visits just from our mules, it's not a leap to say, yes, this would have made a difference.
Adding these numbers up, we have 2,000 plus mules based upon not searching these whole states. And remember, we're only talking about a small number of states. We're not talking about the whole country.
We're not even talking about whole states.
We're not even talking about whole states.
Right, that's right.
And we're also talking about a gross undercount of the actual number of mules because you set a high bar. They had to go to 10 drop boxes. So if there's a mule who went to 7 drop boxes, you wouldn't catch that guy.
And they had to go to nonprofits. So they had to meet those 2 criteria and then go to one of the geofence drop boxes. If they met the 2 criteria but went to a post office box, we're not going to look at them.
One of the slogans of the Democrats through all this debate has been make every vote count. And I think we can now see in a chilling way that this is kind of what they mean. What they mean is, it doesn't matter if all kinds of illegal ballots are being dropped in, let's just count them.
Now the narrative needs to be that this is the most secure election. This is the most fabulous election we've ever had. Pay no mind to the millions of Americans that are saying something is not right. This does not make sense. Nothing to see here, just smile and wave, boys.
I mean, wouldn't it be an accurate summary to say that these voter bills that the Democrats are desperate to enact, to federalize the election, isn't it that they want to take all these special provisions that have enabled what we've described, or you've described in the 2020 election, and make it permanent?
If we don't wake up and do the hard, roll up your sleeves work that it's going to take to reel this all back together, then yes, all the pieces are in place for our election system to be in permanent lockdown. And it will be done under the watchful eye of a media that will tell you it's all just fine.
It seems like they are subverting democracy in the public pretense of protecting it.
Absolutely. And it won't stop unless we stop it.
If I look across the swath of Republicans, this is not the kind of issue that they seem to be comfortable with. It's almost like they would rather endure.
That's right.
As I said,
well, it's a gamble, right? Because the ones that are enduring are currently elected and in power. When you watch these brazen acts and nobody says a word because they're scared that they're going to be sued, because they're scared that they're going to be canceled, because they're scared that they're going to be silenced, that kind of chilling effect is exactly what they want.
And as I said, on the other side of fear is freedom. If you never get past the fear, you're never free.
Let's sum up what we know. Do we know for sure that this was not, in fact, far from, the most secure election in history?
It was not.
We know that for a fact.
Do we know for a fact that there was coordinated, systematic fraud in all the key states where the election was decided?
Yes.
Yes.
And therefore, does it follow that the people who suspected fraud, even though they didn't have the proof, their suspicion was right?
Absolutely. Their instincts are right.
And moreover, that the states that are trying to do something about systematic fraud by restoring a modicum of, let's call it the old rules, checking your voter ID, checking signatures. You want a mail-in ballot? You know what? You got to request an absentee ballot. We're not going to send 20 million ballots out there and see what comes back. That these voter integrity laws, far from being voter suppression, are actually a legitimate way to make sure that the people who vote are actually eligible to vote.
100% accurate.
That's absolutely correct.
What you are seeing is a crime. These are fraudulent votes. In 2 of our 5 key states, you were allowed to give your ballot to be delivered by a family member or a caregiver. This is vote harvesting, but it's not the same as ballot trafficking. In no state in America is it legal for nonprofit organizations to collect ballots and pay mules to deliver them to mail-in drop boxes. Now we come to the most important question of all. Was the magnitude of vote trafficking in these key swing states enough to tip the balance in the 2020 presidential election? Let's first narrow in on just our 2,000 mules. Their average number of Dropbox visits, 38. Their average number of illegal ballots deposited per visit, 5. That's 380,000 illegal votes. But was this sufficient to put Biden in the White House? To answer that question, we must look at each key state. In Michigan, 500 mules, averaging 50 Dropbox visits and 5 illegal ballots per drop. That's 125,000 illegally trafficked votes, not quite the 154,000 vote difference between Trump and Biden. So Michigan, with its 16 electoral votes, stays in the Biden column. In Wisconsin, 100 mules, averaging 28 drop-box visits and 5 illegal ballots per drop. That's 14,000 illegally trafficked votes, 6,000 votes short to give Trump the win. So using only our mules, Wisconsin's 10 electoral votes stays in the Biden camp. But now we come to Georgia. 250 mules, averaging 24 drop-box visits and 5 illegal ballots per drop. That's 30,000 illegally trafficked votes, far more than the 12,000 vote difference between Trump and Biden. So Georgia, with 16 electoral votes, moves over into the Trump column. In Arizona, the numbers are roughly the same. 200 mules, averaging 20 drop-box visits and 5 illegal ballots per drop. That's 20,000 illegal votes. Again, these illegal votes are substantially more than the 10,000 vote margin that gave the state's 11 electoral votes to Biden. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania alone, 1,100 mules, averaging 50 drop-box visits and 5 ballots per visit. That's 275,000 illegal votes, again comfortably exceeding the 80,000 vote margin between Trump and Biden. So Pennsylvania's 20 electoral votes goes for Trump. Shockingly, even this narrow way of looking at just our 2,000 mules in these swing states gives Trump the win, with 279 electoral votes to Biden's 259. But no one thinks that our 2,000 mules were the only mules trafficking illegal votes. To widen the search, Greg and his team lowered the criterion from 10 or more to 5 or more drop boxes. This revealed a huge upsurge in the number of mules from 2,000 to 54,000. 54,000 mules. Next, they used a very conservative estimate of just 3 ballots per drop box visit. Now, when we multiply this increased number of mules times the 5 drop box visits per mule times just 3 illegal votes per drop, we find election fraud on an astonishing scale. In Wisconsin, 83,565 illegal votes were trafficked. In Georgia, 92,670. In Pennsylvania, 209,505. In Michigan, 226,590, and in Arizona, 207,435. Using this calculus, Trump would have won all the key states. And the final electoral vote, 305 to 233. I wanted to get my Salem colleagues' take on what I'd learned here.
How did you get this video? Is this all surveillance footage? Is this like official status?
This is all
official.
Right. This is all acquired through open records. This is the way that we get it.
There's 4 million minutes of video.
Well, these are official footage.
This is official surveillance footage. It's indisputable. It was taken by the state itself.
That's the only place that the video
left,
came from.
I think, did not anticipate that anyone would go through this video.
So this is 1 o'clock in the morning.
Don't we all vote at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Right.
Seems silly, but somebody asked me, they go, how do we know this is not normal mail? This is a ballot drop box.
Right.
Okay, this is not the mailbox where you write your mom.
She's got gloves on.
She's got gloves on. And what does she do with the gloves? Ooh. Whoopsie daisy.
Hang on, she walked straight past that can and didn't see it.
You gotta show that again. It's hilarious. Look, she just walks in.
So this is not the first time she's done that.
No.
So that one was in Georgia, is that right?
Yes.
So in Georgia, it is illegal to turn in anyone but yourself or your family member's ballot. It is illegal.
Right?
It is illegal. So forget the outcome. That's an illegal practice, what you just saw.
That's right.
Video number 2.
Dog guy.
This is called Dog Guy.
He's taking pictures.
Why would you do that?
So you get paid?
It's business.
It's business.
What do you suspect if you had actually caught this person at that moment hand me those ballots, and the person did, what do you think you would see? Whose name is on it, in your opinion?
Ineligible voters, people that have moved.
Would you see legitimate ballots?
There's an ambiguity in what you're saying. The ballot itself is legitimate.
No, that
right. It's not a fake piece of paper.
Yes,
right.
Okay.
But again, remember, when you mail in a ballot, you have a security envelope with the signature verification standard that's been all but washed away. And as soon as it's taken out of that envelope, then you have a disconnect, and the ballot is private.
It's a virgin sheet of paper.
The ballot is
private. The only ID is on the envelope on the outside.
This is an example of multiple ballots. So this
3:57 a.m.
Prime voting time.
Got to beat the lines.
This person comes up, and what you're going to see is when you try to put too many ballots in.
He needs a shoehorn.
And we have lots of those, where they're just jamming them in and then they fall on the ground. And when you can jam them...
I mean, this alone is, to say the least, suggestive. Who's voting at 3:57 a.m. with a whole bunch of ballots?
And then being able to match that ping where he's standing there to the next place he goes.
So we're seeing videos of one.
Right.
But each one of these, went to...
On average,
Do you have
23
video
times.
of the same guy going different places?
Yes. Right. This is their pattern of life. So in one night, this person, this mule, went across 6 counties to 27 different drop boxes, 5 different organizations.
In one night. So he was getting the ballots from the organization.
Correct.
Yeah. The Republicans had no idea this was going on during the election.
Trump, to his credit, tweeted out in July, mail-in ballots are a disaster.
Yep.
And he was attacked so hard by Kemp and Ducey and so many.
But he didn't have this information, obviously.
His instinct ended up being right.
This is the tip of the iceberg. You're talking about extraordinary criminal activity, but there's a ton more, you would guess, that you have not even touched.
You are talking about 200,000-300,000 ballots that were just harvested in only your geolocated locations. But you are talking, what, 5% of America?
Less.
Less than 5%. Okay. So the case closed. Sorry, gentlemen, lady. Case closed.
All right, so I do a heroic thing that not necessarily others here do. I read the New York Times every day.
That's crazy.
We're sorry for you.
It's my martyrdom. They claim all of these places we have found maybe 4, maybe 50 phony ballots.
These aren't phony ballots.
Right,
No
okay,
one's
so
ever, this is a very novel...
they're phony names.
No.
There's no name on the ballot, Dennis.
Okay, let's say we got access to every single ballot thrown into the ballot boxes. Would we be able to prove this is a fraud?
It's the perfect crime because it cannot be curated after it is committed, because the evidence has no connection to the person who is meant to be voting. That's the problem. As soon as it gets taken out of the envelope, the identity of the voter
we're claiming,
disappears.
So the vote from John Doe is from a John Doe who is dead or a John Doe who is moved. Is that correct?
Or voted somewhere else.
Or voted why is that not provable?
There's an easy way to bust it, but it's not the way you think. It's not to go find the ballots in the ballot mix. You can't do that. The way to find it is these guys have the cell phone identification of all the mules, all of them. So law enforcement has to step in at this point, and their next step...
What were you doing 7 times?
...is to go and interview the mules. Who paid you?
Right.
Where'd you get the money?
Will any state's law enforcement do this?
This is a big question. The mules aren't going to fess up. They know they're participating in something that is
Well, you've got them on videotape. You've got 2,000 people who are committing felonies.
Right. I'd like you to just reflect about what you've learned today and how you're feeling and thinking about it.
It's just sickening to me.
This is jaw-dropping.
What you showed is frightening.
Republicans had no clue this was going on.
I wondered, were there any Republicans who did know? Investigative journalist Heather Mullins interviews a whistleblower hired by the National Republican Senatorial Committee.
I was hired by the NRSC. My job was basically to watch the ballot boxes. And this was for the early voting in Georgia. So that started on December 14th. It ended on the 31st of December. And we would monitor that box from 8 to 8 all day long. So consequently, during those two weeks, I monitored those boxes indiscriminately. I would move around to the different areas in the boxes and watch them 30 minutes here, an hour there. And then I would start to see things where I'd see people walking up with backpacks, and they were unloading large numbers of pallets, stuffing them in the box. Recorded some of that and took pictures of it and dates and times and those things. I spotted plates from Texas, from Colorado, South Carolina, North Carolina, and I just thought that was odd that all these states were coming in and these people would get out, and I'd watch them get out, and then they'd go up to the ballot and stuff a ballot in the ballot box. I thought that was kind of odd. So, we took pictures of those things when we took pictures, recorded license plates and those things. And then I uploaded those photographs to a Dropbox. Then when it came to the Georgia runoff, the actual day of the election, which was January 5th, I was up there, it was early in the morning. Now, there were Stacey Abrams people all along the sidewalk up there.
How did you know that they were Stacey Abrams people, though?
Well, they had those masks on that said vote. Okay. She has one of those things they had, this was during COVID, right? And they were part of that initiative. I knew that she was part of that initiative that she had going on about get out the vote kind of thing. So it was Democratic Party and it was Abrams people that were, they were all interacting with each other. And then the local Democratic Party chairman was there also. About 6:30 that evening, we noticed there was a female couple. These two ladies had run up and they had a big stack of ballots. And we were standing there and they tried to shove the ballots in there. And I'm looking at her, taking pictures, and the other gentleman took some video and everything. And she turned around and looked at us and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, we're taking a picture." And she said, "Well, you can't do that." And I said, "Yes, I can." And she got mad. And she ran up the sidewalk and left.
So you're saying the NRSC was made aware that there were people stuffing drop boxes at specific dates and times?
Yes.
So with what you witnessed during your time watching these drop boxes, do you believe that that was enough for law enforcement to get involved?
Oh, definitely. But after several weeks, no contact or anything, and I just...
Now, so you're saying, though, if somebody had contacted you, you would be willing to testify to these things and give those depositions under oath?
I would have had to.
Yeah.
I would have had to.
Catherine, hey.
Greg just interviewed an informant in Arizona who's now cooperating with authorities.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Check your email.
Okay, awesome. I'll do it. Thanks so much. Okay, bye. Hey, honey.
Yeah.
Take a look at this. So this is, I remember Greg was going to interview that mule, and so we got the video.
Thank you again for.
I guess they're concealing her identity.
So what was your job? Like, what were you doing?
Receptionist.
So at some point, you were asked or sort of instructed, I guess, to start receiving people's ballots.
I was just instructed to go ahead and receive ballots from various people, females mostly, and on Friday they would come and pick up payment. I assumed it was payments for what they were doing.
So they would, during the week, they would bring them in at various times, and then you would pay them like all on a Friday. Is that kind of how it went?
Yes.
Interesting.
And then I would get a call to find out how many ballots were brought in and if they were already pre-filled out first. And she would come to the office, look at them, and then before she left, she would either take them herself, but other times she would ask me if I could drop them off at the library.
So what was the instruction?
Just to drop them off.
In the drop box?
In the drop box, the early ballots.
Can you give me an idea of how many you personally put in the box? Hundreds?
Could have been, yes.
And was there a reason she wanted you to go to that drop box as opposed to maybe City Hall or something?
There's no cameras. There's no cameras there. And she would want me to take it in the evening when it was dark also.
Do you think this is widespread in Yuma County or elsewhere?
I would say it is.
So do you think that people you know in St. Luis, they believe that their vote matters?
I don't even think they know the meaning of what voting is.
Do you personally think that the elections in San Luis are free and fair?
No. They're fixed. They've been fixed. They already know, seriously, who is going to win the next election before it even happens.
How do you think this affects the community, especially the Hispanic community? Because it seems like they're preying on minorities.
They're an easy target because most of the Hispanics that live in the town are not well educated as far as the law. They look at it mostly as, oh, she's trying to help us because we're older, because she's having someone come and pick it up at my house, because I don't drive. Most of them, maybe, I would say honestly, 90% of the elderlies that live in San Luis don't drive or have relatives that are willing to drive them to do this, to go to the voting polls. Back when I first moved into the city of San Luis, I did have somebody come and knock on my door and ask for my ballot. And it was somebody I knew and that I had known for many years since I was a child. And up to this day, that person does not talk to me because I said there was no way I was giving them my ballot.
What a brave woman to do this.
Totally.
I call it the Mexican mafia, seriously, because they work like that.
It seems like we need to do a better job of maybe educating folks or helping people understand that this stuff's not okay.
I offered a long time ago, but again, they told me, oh, don't do it because you're gonna end up in the trash can in pieces.
What do you think it's going to take to get this trafficking to stop?
For people to get caught and to pay the price.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
We know that the Mules got their stashes of ballots from these activist organizations. But where did the activist organizations get the ballots from? Hans von Spakovsky is a former member of the Federal Election Commission, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and co-author of the book Our Broken Elections.
I will say election fraud is bipartisan, but most of the cases I see are, unfortunately, the Democratic Party.
Hans, you just watched a mule kind of fessing up about participating in this trafficking operation. Is this kind of a mule operation something familiar to you?
But unfortunately, this is so common in some parts of America, particularly the Hispanic community, that they have a special name there. There they call them politiqueros. And these are individuals who are paid by campaigns or political parties to go into neighborhoods and collect absentee ballots to pressure and coerce voters.
People who observe election fraud have commented that absentee ballot fraud or mail ballot fraud is the easiest and the most common type of election fraud. Why is that?
Well, because they're the only kind of ballot that is voted outside the supervision of election officials and outside the observation of poll watchers. Transparency, as you know, is very important in the election process, and there's no one there at a voter's home to observe what's happening. Also, remember, when you're in a polling place, you fill out your ballot and you then deposit it directly into the ballot box. That obviously is not what happens with absentee ballots.
There are some states, I believe about half of them, about 27 states, that allow voter harvesting. And by voter harvesting, what we mean is that you are allowed to give your ballot to someone else and ask them to deliver it. Now, are there any states in which you're allowed to pay mules to deliver ballots to drop boxes?
No, you're not supposed to be doing that. And allowing vote trafficking to begin with is a huge mistake because you're giving third-party strangers, you know, candidates, campaign staffers, party activists, all people who have a stake in the outcome of the election, you're giving them the ability to handle something very valuable, a ballot.
Voter fraud is almost incalculably rare in the United States.
Does it
ever happen? Okay, occasionally it does happen, but it doesn't happen on a national scale.
Doesn't affect the outcome.
It would affect the outcome.
I read these days constantly that election fraud, well, it could occur, but those cases are extremely rare. They're so episodic, they don't have the ability to tip an election. Is that true?
Fraud happens often enough that elections get overturned. I mean, just go back 3 years to 2018 and a congressional race was overturned. I can cite to you another case in Mississippi. It was just overturned by a court because of fraud. Same thing in Florida. But look, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Now, we've shown that you've got these mules who are picking up these ballots at various vote stash houses. Hans, where do these organizations get ballots?
Well, to quote Shakespeare, let me count the ways. You know, everything from filling out absentee ballot request forms for voters, but having the ballots sent to them, to actually going to the voters and obtaining the ballots from them, to stealing them out of mailboxes, to actually using high-quality photocopy machines to make their own ballots. Look, these cases unfortunately go on all the time. You can go to 2018, which wasn't that long ago, in North Carolina.
Leslie McCrae Dowless is accused of mishandling absentee ballots in North Carolina's 9th District.
Dallas would frequently obtain this report from the Board of Elections, looking for the date an absentee ballot was mailed and if it had been returned.
Ginger Eason, who first told me she was hired to pick up ballots, and Kelly Hendricks, who testified she did the same thing. What would you do with the ballots after you picked them up?
Take them straight to the office in Dublin and hand them over to McCrae. And I don't know what happened to him after that. I know there was stacks of them on his desk.
There was testimony in the case that his staffers were falsely signing as witnesses on those absentee ballots. Because he had done this before, he actually apparently had signatures of voters from prior elections in his offices. Voter rolls are in notoriously bad shape. States do a very bad job of taking people off who are no longer eligible because they've died or moved away. And it's very easy to get hold of a state's voter registration list. So, you know, if somebody's on the list and they haven't voted in 10 years, you're probably pretty safe in trying to cast a ballot
on their behalf.
On their behalf. Remember, in states that made the mistake of simply mailing out a absentee ballot to every single registered voter, well, if you're a fraudster and you get hold of that absentee ballot, you've got 90% of the information you need to fill it out because the name's going to be on the outer envelope and their registered address.
Let's follow the track of these mail-out ballots, right? Let's just say you got students on a campus, they've voted, but then they graduate, and obviously they move to a different state. If they're on the voter rolls, is it not a fact that mail ballots will be arriving in the dorms and arriving, and so presumably they're not going to be that hard to scoop up if somebody knows where to look for them?
No, that's exactly right. And you know, I work in the District of Columbia. They mailed out absentee ballots to all of their registered voters, and I can't tell you how many phone calls I got from people that I know saying that not only had their ballot arrived in the mail, but 5, 6, 7 ballots all coming into their apartment for people who used to live there.
Now, a former Supreme Court justice in Wisconsin named Gableman has done a preliminary report. He talks about the fact that there are approximately 90,000 people in Wisconsin who are in resident care facilities or nursing homes.
So she's basically not capable any longer of even remaining awake for more than a few minutes.
And so are you surprised that she voted in February 2021?
Absolutely.
But I was surprised to hear that she voted in the last presidential election.
Much to my surprise, she had voted for off and on for the last 10 years. I guess in my mind, I thought if you put your parent into a facility because they were incapacitated, they would not even be offered the vote.
They make you vote.
They make you vote here? And So how do they make you
Because
vote?
I didn't want to vote, and they told me I had to.
That is a real problem. Clearly it was a problem in Wisconsin 2020, but unfortunately that's a perennial problem in other states too. What happens is you have staff in those nursing homes. Sometimes they are activists politically. They get these individuals registered to vote, or if they're already registered to vote, they will request absentee ballots in their name, sometimes forging their signatures, and then filling out the ballots for them. Just prior to the 2020 election, the state of Texas indicted a social worker in a home for young people who were basically mentally incompetent. She had sent in over 100 voter registrations for these individuals who were not legally competent to vote.
What about homeless shelters?
Look, if a homeless individual is mentally capable, they ought to be able to vote. And if the only place they can list as a registered address is a homeless shelter, that's fine. But the problem there is that it's very easy, I think, for them to be intimidated and coerced. In Chicago, the largest election fraud case the U.S. Justice Department ever prosecuted, they were paying homeless individuals to cast ballots the way they wanted them to cast ballots.
What made you want to do this? What made you want to get involved?
Well, I knew election stuff was supposed to be something good to do, and then plus I needed a little extra money to get Christmas for my son. So that's why, the main reason I did that.
Who do these fraudsters pick on? They pick on the most vulnerable in our society. They go into poor neighborhoods, they pick on the elderly, they pick on people for whom English is not their first language. When we're trying to stop election fraud, we're actually trying to protect, I'd say, the most vulnerable people in our society.
We now know where the ballots could have come from, but to pull off a heist like this on a national scale would take deep pockets. I wanted to find out where the money might have come from. Who could have funded the heist? I met with Scott Walter, an old colleague of mine at the American Enterprise Institute, who is now head of the Capital Research Center. This is an organization that has produced multiple reports on the funding of elections.
People think of three rivers of money, really, that empty into the gulf of elections. The hard dollars to write a check to a candidate. The second you hear soft money or dark money. And then there's a third river that people tend to neglect, but Capital Research Center has studied intently, and that is the 501c3 nonprofit money. The kind of charity that you get to take a tax deduction for. That river is enormous. In the 2018 cycle, about $21 billion.
Now, what do the IRS regulations say about the involvement of these nonprofits?
By law, these nonprofit charities are forbidden to directly intervene in elections in any way or to help a particular party or candidate. The IRS is emphatic that you cannot intend or even have the effect of helping one party or candidate over the other.
Now, let's talk about some of the key elements of this particular network that we're focusing on. We have drop boxes, and those drop boxes are, most people would think, funded entirely by the states. In other words, the drop boxes in Georgia are funded by the state of Georgia, but that's not entirely the case, is it?
In the 2020 election, there was an unprecedented hundreds of millions of private dollars going into government election offices. The $470 million or so dollars were sent by Mark Zuckerberg and his wife.
We did our part to secure the integrity of the election.
There were a few other places that put in much smaller amounts. One entity that put in $25 million was, again, a nonprofit that's part of the Arabella Advisors, which as a total empire in 2020 took in $1.7 billion.
Is there any evidence that this operation had a partisan thrust or a partisan character?
As we all know, big money rarely comes without strings attached. One of the big ones is lots and lots of drop boxes. Also, lots and lots of vote by mail. To get your nice big checks, you had to do things like have drop boxes, encourage vote by mail, have ads in foreign languages, all kinds of things that little by little are nudging the turnout for one particular political party. In addition to the $470 or so million that went into the Zuckbuck operation, you also had in 2020 a $120 million project, very secretive, called the Voter Registration Project. The $120 million, it came from Soros's foundation, it came from Visa's foundation, it came from Warren Buffett's foundation, it came from unions like the SEIU. The Voter Registration Project has as its goal increasing in the 8 target states over 2 million voters who are overwhelmingly expected to vote for the Democratic Party.
And so the states that we're talking about here, Arizona?
Yes.
Georgia?
Yes.
North Carolina?
Yes.
Any others?
Nevada, New Mexico.
Here we've got an operation of illegal vote trafficking. You've got thousands of mules. They're being paid to do this. What you're saying is there is more than enough money available to fund any such operation. In fact, this would be only one part of a much larger effort to control the election.
We are talking $500 million in nonprofit charitable funds flowing into efforts to register and get out the vote for Democrats. Most of the left-wing mainstream media, when they reported on the Zuckbucks going through, they made it sound like, oh, it's all gonna go for masks and, you know, plexiglass and all. And every study that's ever been done of some of the grants to the big cities found a few percent maybe going to help people that way, and the massive amounts of money going into ginning up the vote-by-mail operation and the drop box operation and those sorts of things that benefit one political party.
How confident should we be that this will be a fair election?
They're sending millions of ballots all over the country. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen.
Trump predicted. He said the Democrats are going to cheat, that they're going to use the pretext of COVID, they're going to rig the rules in their favor. Nevertheless, Republicans focus their efforts on the campaign, while Democrats focus their efforts on the process of actually running the election.
The two sides don't approach elections in the same way. The Democrats, they understand that the rules, the process by which elections are conducted is just critical.
We must now face the chilling reality. The Democrats conceived the heist. They funded it. They organized it. Then they carried it out. They rigged and stole the 2020 presidential election. We cannot be okay with this. We cannot simply move on. Guys, I'd like to have your honest assessment on what you've seen, what you've heard, and what we can reasonably draw from it.
What do we have empirically? We have data, geolocated, we have footage of people harvesting ballots. Do we know who those ballots were for? We can't know who they were for. However, you have to inject common sense. Are we saying that in the centers of Democrat-held districts, we are seeing hundreds and hundreds of visits to drop boxes with pro-Trump ballots? It beggars belief.
It's ballot laundering. Looks pretty convincing to me. I don't think we'll ever know the full story. And what makes this crime so compelling and unique is that once the ballot enters the system, it's really hard to reverse engineer it. But when you have the cell phone geolocation data and then the actual footage of them doing what you would expect them to be doing, taking pictures of the ballots, taking gloves off, visiting multiple times, I mean, it seems pretty clear to me, and it explains the sudden spike in Biden's support that we saw late at night, the kind of instinct that people had. The control of the U.S. Senate went through Georgia with. So Chuck Schumer's majority leader, probably because of what we just saw. And then
I'd like them to answer the mules. If they say it's clean, then be honest and say, okay.
They have two ways they'll try to invalidate it. One is minimizing and then slander.
Yeah, right.
So they'll try to slander Dinesh personally. They'll say, oh, Trump pardoned him or whatever. Therefore, he's trying to get back at Trump to try to reinforce the big lie. I could already see the headline of the Washington Post. Trump pardoned ally comes out with questionable movie.
I predict right now they will say, what on earth is a conservative doing tracking private citizens? Gee, how dare, what is Dinesh D'Souza doing to voters at 3 a.m.? In fact, I mean, that'll be part of it.
Intimidation will be the word.
Right.
The word will be intimidation. They'll say no person is safe, communities of color are being tracked, People like in black neighborhoods are now going to have to fear for their life that their cell phone pings will be paired. And this is Jim Crow 2.0, Dinesh. Is what it is.
I disagree that this is not going to be compelling enough. This is a smoking gun. This is O.J. Simpson being seen leaving the scene of the crime. I don't care how partisan you are. You can't dismiss all of this. How do you explain somebody going to a whole bunch of different drop boxes with a whole bunch of different ballots on the same night at 3:57 a.m. in the morning? How do you explain that? That alone. I'm sorry. I think a whole bunch of people in this country are going to go, oh my God.
I think that if every American saw that, I think it would move the needle. However, their ability to keep their side ignorant is total.
That's going to be impossible to keep a lid on this thing.
Well, this movie is an Overton window moment, right? So documentaries can do this every once in a while. Michael Moore did it. He moved the Overton window on many different topics 20 years ago. Al Gore did it with climate change. It'll happen, as Ernest Hemingway said, gradually and then suddenly. Because it's not just how many people are going to watch this film, it's who's going to watch it. It's going to be lawmakers. It's going to be people that work for the Bureau. It's going to be someone somewhere with a conscience that has power and to say, this is a problem.
It can't be dismissed.
It can't be dismissed. They have ruined Election Day in the United States of America. That's provable. And that's enough for me to fight the left with every fiber in my body.
Without free and fair elections, we are not a democracy. We are a nation run by a criminal cartel masquerading as a democracy. Never in U.S. history has a presidential election been as thoroughly corrupted by coordinated fraud across multiple states as we now know took place in 2020. Today, totalitarian regimes camouflage their fake elections with appearance of democracy, but they're not real democracies. We don't want to join them. Our elections must represent the will of American citizens. We who believe in constitutional democracy must be diligent. If we give up, they win. In fact, if enough of us give up, they won't need to cheat anymore. Don't stay home. Get involved. Get out and vote. Do what is necessary to save this great country. The America we love needs us now more than ever.
I think the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Like a thief in the night, they stole them votes. Like a thief in the night, they stole them votes. 2,000 mules on a mission. 2,000 mules on a mission, rigging elections. Like a thief in the night, they stole them votes. Like a thief in the night, they stole them votes. 2,000 mules on a mission. 2,000 mules on a mission.
I love that song. The movie, wow, oh my goodness. Well, that was amazing. Did you guys have fun? I can't tell if this is a happy moment or this is a horror film, but I want to invite to the stage to begin our Q&A. So, Dinesh, why don't you come on up here so we can get started? Do you want to take a seat? There are mics on all the chairs.
Guys, before we start the Q&A, I just want to pay tribute to our film team. We have a small core team that puts these movies together. And, well, we just have two key figures of that team here. I don't do these things by myself. I'm the front man, I sometimes say. But this is a movie that is written and directed, not by me alone, but also my wife, Debbie, and my partner and best friend, Bruce Schooley. So Bruce and Debbie, if you don't mind coming, come on up and just take a bow and wave. These guys don't get the recognition. Debbie's not just a singer, she's involved in every aspect. And of course, and she's also, she says that from her old days when she was a kid, she always wanted to be a Venezuelan soap opera actress. This is about the closest she's going to come to doing that. All right, I'm going to call up Catherine Engelbrecht, Greg Phillips, and Eric Metaxas, and we're going to begin about 40 minutes or so of Q&A, and Danielle will moderate, and so let's get it going.
Make sure to leave some questions, guys. Comment if you have any questions you would like the people up here to answer. Definitely write them. They're actually going to come up on the screen, and so I'll be able to see you guys. I'll be able to see your questions. So please start getting started on writing those. I think I'm going to start with, well, this one in the audience is saying, should I write a question? I'm like, but you're here. I guess you could raise your hand. Okay, we're going to start with Matthew Culver. Matthew Culver, they're going to bring you onto the screen so you can ask your question. Matthew Culver, I hope you haven't logged off on us, because if so, I'm going to have to go to the next person. Matthew Culver, are you in the room? No,
he's right
All
ahead.
right,
No, I'm on the screen.
Oh, you're here. Okay, good, because I was about to move on. Please ask your question, Matthew.
Well, actually, I think a lot of my questions have been answered. I mean, I just knew something just didn't seem right. You know, it was the same as everybody else in America. We went to bed thinking Trump won and woke up in the morning, and then we see all those charts where it just showed Biden going straight up, and something fishy. And this answered those questions. Why did it seem so fishy? Because it was. So I guess that's more of a statement than a question.
Thank you, Matthew, for your comment to our 80,000 listeners. You are correct, Matthew. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to Mark Hefner. Can we pull him onto the screen? He's RM20, if that helps with our technology here. RM20. Mark, there you are.
I want to thank you for all of your work, very revealing, and just phenomenal what the information that you shared. And the big question I have is, how can we change the nature of our country and get back to a democracy and a government for the people, by the people, so how can we do this? Well, how can we turn this around? Because I think this has been going on for a long time.
That's a great question, Mark. I think I want to throw that question to Catherine Engelbrecht to answer this one for us of True the Vote.
Sure. First, Mark, take heart, because I know just upon viewing this, it seems overwhelming. But the fact is that if we stand together, the sentinel impact of standing together and standing for election integrity will overwhelm the bad guys. There are some process things that we need to do. We need to pay close attention to the inaccurate voter rolls, which are the gateway to vote fraud. We need to stand with our legislators to pull back some of the things that were codified in 2020, like the infusion of privately funded drop boxes, the drop boxes themselves, the removals of checks and balances like signature verification. So there's some practical things that need to be done. But I think one of the biggest things that can happen now is, because of the time that we've just come through as a country, and there have been so many questions about this election, and it's been such a focus, share this movie and use it as a talking point, use it as a conversation starter to wake people up. Because you're exactly right. It's been going on for a long time. In 2020, it was over the top, and now it's time to wake up and get involved, because we can pull this back together, but it's going to take all of us.
Thank you so much. Okay, Catherine. Now we're going to go to RM18, James Panagas. Let's see if we can get James onto the screen here. James.
I am here.
You're here. Okay. What's your question, James?
I have so many questions. First, congratulations for putting this film together. Absolutely eye-opening, depressing at the same time. And I guess my biggest question is, what can we do to fix it? You know, we all know that the election didn't go off the way it was supposed to. That President Trump probably should have won in a landslide. And we're now looking at the consequences of an illegitimate government. I mean, what can we do? It just feels very, very difficult. And I'm sure that this feeling is shared by most of the people watching this along with me tonight.
Thank you, James. Okay, I'll throw this question to Dinesh. Why don't you answer this one?
You know, our original plan was to include a section in the movie specifically devoted to the 10 things that can be done by state legislatures, can be done by attorneys general, can be done by ordinary citizens. True the Vote has laid out a pathway for things to do, and I would refer you to the True the Vote website, truethevote.org, and all kinds of practical things that you can do to address this. But let me make kind of a broader point here. When I first got involved with Catherine and Greg in this project, I was thinking that the goal of this movie is twofold. Number one, to tell the truth, to blow out of the water the nonsense that this was the most secure election ever, and then to make sure it doesn't happen again. But the more I've gotten involved with this, and the more I've learned about all this, the more I realize that this idea that we just need to move on to the next time is insufficient. Because what about this time? I mean, what about what just happened? What about the possibility that we have a usurper in the Oval Office? I mean, when it emerged that Lance Armstrong had won the Tour de France, 8 times by taking illegal drugs, they didn't say, well, you know what? Let's just fix the Tour de France so this doesn't happen again. They took away his medals. Why? Because he does not deserve to have the fruits of his cheating. So I think that we need to at least give some thought, some serious thought to what the implications of this movie and the power of this evidence and the idea that we can't move forward until we come to a full reckoning with what really happened in the 2020 election.
Thank you. We're now going to go to RM17, Silmara Henriksen. If you're there you are. What's your question?
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Question is, we kind of knew that this happened, and what can each person do to help prevent in a small way that in the end you become a wave? I thought about volunteer to be a poll watcher or something like that, but if you guys could please give us information on what can we do in our small ways to help it prevent this from happening again.
That's a great question. I'll throw this one to Eric, because Eric's great.
I think, in a way, we're getting the same question over and over, because these are the ultimate questions. I forget, because I've seen this film 3 times. When you see it the first time, it's sickening. It's astonishing. And you think, someone must do something. Here's the key, first of all. If you're angry about this, if you care about this, you need to get your neighbors to see this, okay? So it's not about the money. You get 1 DVD and you invite 100 people. Do whatever you want. But if we do not get most Americans to understand what actually happened, their election was stolen. Every one of you who saw this tonight has to get others to see what you saw and ask them, did I miss something? Did you see what I saw? Is there any possibility that this is nonsense? It's obvious that there's not nonsense. But if you do not have enough people aware, if you do not get people in America talking about this at the water coolers, if you don't get people all across this country furious that something like this could happen in the greatest country in the history of the world, then you become part of the problem. Every one of you has a job to do to get this out, and then God will take care of the rest. That's my feeling.
I want to toss this to Catherine too, but before that, I want to say that this movie is the first movie that we've released in an age of censorship. There is a supreme effort to block this message. And the censorship is bad on some of the other topics. There's censorship on the trans issue, on climate change, on COVID, but nowhere is the censorship more intense than on the issue of election fraud. So this movie is on the verge of breaking out into the mainstream culture in which the left cannot stop it. So you need to help us to get it out there in such a way that they can't stop it, that they sort of gaze helplessly, their objections are stupid. They're making all these objections based upon a weak understanding of how this even works. So we can deal with the rebuttals, but it's the chance to get up there and make the rebuttal that matters. And with that, Catherine, talk about what the ordinary citizen says. I'm going to put some time into this. I'm going to do something. What are 2 things that you would say they should do?
Well, go to truethevote.org. We have training up for how you, if you want to be involved in elections, maybe for the very first time, there's such a need for citizen engagement. So there's some practical things you can do. But I cannot stress enough. Look, I've been doing this for 10 years. So much of this, actually 12 years. Seems like it's still 2020 in many ways. So much of this is what happens in your own mind. If you think you're defeated, then we're defeated. But if you look at this and you say, not on my watch. I'm not going to be complicit. It happened. It will never happen again. There are so many things that you can do, and speaking out is a huge step in the right direction. Showing this movie, talking about it, and then engaging. We can change this. We can change all of this for the better, but it won't happen if we just watch the movie and say, I hope someone else fixes it. Again, for 12 years, I can tell you, no one's going to fix it. It's the American people that have to stand up.
Thank you. I want to make sure we get in another question, and I see someone on the screen. I see RM12, Paulette in Boston. So let's get Paulette onto the screen. I see she has her hand raised. Okay, well, if that takes a second to get her on the screen, why don't we call on someone in the audience? The man in the blue sweater in the corner.
McNeely. Scott McNeely, a former CEO in the Silicon Valley, and now I run a .org, a 501(c). I know the transparency issues. Our donors are all aware of what we do, how we do it. I think you guys need to publish the list of all of the stash houses, the 501(c)s, and publish the names of all of the donors to those people and let the whole world see who was, because they are the middlemen. They are there, and you may have legal issues or some other liability issues, but I sure as heck would like to know who's running 501(c)s doing that kind of bullshit.
Thank you. Why don't we throw this question to Greg, who can talk a little bit about these organizations?
Yeah, you know, you sort of read our mind. I mean, there's no question that you know, that we've been making plans. The reality of all of this is, of course, as you mentioned, you know, there's lawyers and everybody else breathing down our neck. Fox's lawyers are you know, keeping it off Fox, and there's just
say that again.
Fox's lawyers are keeping it off of Fox.
Fox News.
Period. And so what we've decided to do at the end of this movie, if you get opportunity to watch it again, you can download it. You can Salem Now. And on Rumble, and at the end of the movie, it'll cut to the True the Vote logo. Then it will go to a QR code. So just a little hat tip to our 80,000 friends here. Under that QR code is a short video that Catherine and I did to explain exactly what we're about to do. We call it the ripcord. We're going to publish every single finding that we have, yes. Every single minute of video. Every single conclusion, everything we have, we're going to publish. And as you said, pull the ripcord. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's fight.
Thanks, Greg. I saw a question pop up on the screen that I thought was interesting. It was about our elected officials, and I think it was Denise who was asking us, why is it that our elected officials aren't jumping on this? What's going on with them? Are they going to take the next step? I think some might. Some obviously will be exposed as people who are not willing to join in the fight. So why don't we go to you, Dinesh? What do you suggest? Do we kind of keep our eye on these people? We see their true colors? What do we do about this?
Well, and this picks up on a question earlier. One of the things that we can do is wake up the sleeping GOP. The Republican establishment has done nothing significant in this area. We are in a position to deliver a political suppository to our own leaders and say, listen, you need to move, you need to act. Republicans sometimes have what I call the wildebeest syndrome. They're like a grazing herd of wildebeest. The lion jumps in and eats 2 wildebeest, and the others basically go, let's keep eating, let's keep grazing, hopefully I'll be the one that's eaten last. It's a defeatist mentality, and it's motivated by fear. And this is where we come in, because the one group that they'll respond to is us. Now, in terms of officials that can do something, some of these swing states are run by Democrats, but there are others. Arizona has a Republican Attorney General, Brnovich. In Georgia, you've got Raffensperger. And here's a guy who I will say, and to his credit, when he received a complaint from True the Vote with geospatial data, with this information, he's opened an investigation into ballot trafficking, and he has publicly said, I'm doing it in response to True the Vote. But the question is, how sincerely and ardently is this being pursued? Well, Georgians need to make their voices heard to make sure that this investigation presses forward. So this is an affirmation of Catherine's point. The more lethargic we are, not only the less gets done, but the more emboldened the left becomes, because our weakness inspires their aggression. And this is across the board. I mean, they want to pack the court because they believe, even if we take power, we'll never dream of packing the court. We're happy with 9. They'll use the deep state against us because they believe, well, even if you come to power, you're too dumb to use the deep state against us, so we never have to worry that you will do the same to us that we're doing to you. And my point is, this needs to change. We need to start acting a little bit like them and giving them a dose of their own medicine.
All right, we're now going to go to Paulette in Boston. I think she's here. There you are. Paulette, what's your question? We can't hear you. Are you muted? Sorry, everyone. 80,000 people are
That's
waiting.
okay.
No
Can you
worries.
hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi.
Hello.
So I just have to say that none of what I watched tonight was actually a surprise to me. I was one of those people that was absolutely obsessed with finding out what happened in these elections. And I watched every single hearing from all of these counties, from Arizona to Pennsylvania to Wisconsin. And I just wish that other people would just get involved and find out the truth of what's going on in this country. It isn't about the presidential election. It is about the local elections. It's about the school committees. It's about, the mayor's race. It's about the governor's race, the state reps. That's where we need to do all the work. And that's what President Trump is doing right now, is he's helping these people get elected, and that's where we're gonna make a difference, is in the local elections. And I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to make that statement.
Thanks, Paulette. Well, why don't we actually throw this to Eric? I feel like Eric can have some good thoughts on people getting involved locally and why you should do that.
Well, I just want to say, we have been so blessed in this country. This is the horror of being blessed, is you get spoiled. You think this is normal. My parents came from war-torn Europe. My mother came from East Germany. My father came from Greece, where the communists tried to take over. They raised me to know that what we have in this country is not normal. This is a blessed country beyond anything most people in the world could ever dream about. And the problem is that we have been so blessed that we've taken it for granted, and we've allowed things to get to this point. If you want to be free, and not everyone does, some people are lazy and they simply don't care. But those of you, 80,000 who are watching today, you clearly care, and you know people who care. You must get involved. There are 1,000 ways to get involved. I said it earlier. The one thing you can do is get other people to see what you just saw tonight. If we don't spread the word, this dies. But when people say no one's going to do anything, I want to say to them, if you don't do something, you are actually the problem. Every single one of us who is blessed to live in this country has an obligation to do something to keep the republic. In the words of Ben Franklin, A republic, madam, he said to the woman, if you can keep it. Keeping the republic requires something of us. If you want to be governed by others, you don't need to do much. Pay your taxes, keep your nose clean. But if you want to be free, you have to do something. And I'm just really on fire with this idea that most of us, anybody my age, and we've just been so blessed, and we've been kind of told, like, you don't really have to do anything. You know, even when we have a war, we have a professional class, we'll send them to the war. Folks, this is our country. And every single one of us, we need to be in the face of our elected officials. We need to run for school board. We need to get involved, run for state legislature. If you get involved, this will change. If you do nothing, we will go into the ash bin of history. I believe God's hand is on this country. I believe what is happening tonight in this film is part of it. But every single one of you must do something.
Thank you, Eric. So true. Okay, I saw a great question on the screen from Mark, and I want to throw this one to Greg. It's about how can we get more mules to come forward, he's asking us. Can we perhaps incentivize them in some way? Do we think there's a way that somehow they will come forward either on their own or maybe through further investigations? Greg, what can you tell us more about the mules?
Well, we've had extensive experience on this topic, and as you saw on the screen, we've had several people come forward. The challenge is that these are crimes, and you're asking them to come forward and admit to a crime. And in states where these are felonies, you're asking them to come forward and admit to multiple felonies. The other thing about these folks that y'all need to understand, these are not nice people. We've had some extremely difficult situations in talking to some of them, and have endangered everybody in the process. And while we think it's important to identify them, I think it's important for all of us, kind of on our side, to continue to investigate, to continue to dig, and find the Stacey Abrams, find the people that are actually paying these people, and put them in jail. And until
Right, the people up top.
I mean, I'm not defending a crackhead trying to make an extra $80 to get some more crack by any stretch, but on the other hand, I want to know who gave him that $80.
Right, and it seems like these investigations, they need to be taken up because it's like, okay, we see them, we know these things about them, and now the law enforcement needs to do something. So why do you guys think, or I'll throw this one to Catherine, why do you think perhaps law enforcement in some areas is not pushing this more? Like you kind of mentioned with Raffensperger, some people have ignored this evidence, the evidence is put together, people can see this for themselves. Why are some not using this to go after the criminals?
Well, it's politics. We have presented this. Look, we started this in Georgia in May of 2021. We originally presented all of this, all of the data that was necessary to move this investigation forward, and there was a massive political cover-up as a consequence of that, and it raged on until finally we figured out, okay, that's going nowhere. We need to now go back to Raffensperger, Secretary of State Raffensperger, and as Greg said, they've moved forward in an investigation. We are moving state by state in the spaces in which we've done this research. I think it's now a proof point to the groups that we've put this forward to. They have a very hard decision to make. Do they go with it's all a big lie and look away and maybe we'll all just forget, because that's what we always do. We always just let it go and maybe they'll get lucky and maybe we'll forget? Or do they stay the line with us and press on to see what really happened and to continue to peel these layers back? Here's what I can commit to you. True the Vote, myself, Greg, and our team are not going to quit. We're going to pull back those layers, and they're not going to be able to stop that. Now, it's not difficult. Law enforcement uses the kind of data that we provide them. They use that data all day, every day to solve crimes. If they want to, it's right there for the taking. But in the states where we've conducted this research, and for the 80,000 people watching at home, please encourage your representatives, your secretaries of state, your attorneys general to get on the bandwagon with this, because we're not going away and the American people are demanding answers.
And for those of you politicians that may be watching, excuse me, that covered this up, I promise you, we're still watching. And I promise you, we're coming back.
Okay.
I'd like to make a point just briefly about how there are a lot more guilty parties here than were even involved directly in the scheme. And what I mean by this is that the left operates not always by conspiracy, they operate by coordination. Coordination means you've got people who are working to the same end, even though they aren't directly speaking to one another. Think about, for example, how the media suppressed the Hunter Biden story. Did they have a Monday morning Zoom call with CNN, ABC, the New York Times, NPR, PBS, and they all go, listen, let's not touch this one, it's going to hurt our guy. No, they already knew it was going to hurt their guy. And so they work in concert, even without conspiring directly with each other. Now let's look at how this operation was put together. Mark Zuckerberg, who might have known nothing about the Mules, but he funds the drop boxes. Without the drop boxes, the Mules have no place to go. Where would they go to? And then you have Mark Elias, Stacey Abrams, and they're fighting tooth and nail with legal teams to weaken signature requirements. Essentially what they're doing is they're taking a bank and they're saying, let's call off the security guards. Let's turn down the surveillance cameras. Let's tell the tellers not to match signatures. Again, they may not be directly involved with the Mules, but they're enabling the heist. Now, the power of this movie is that unlike some earlier work, we don't just talk about this is how the heist was made possible. We actually show you the heist. It wasn't just easy to do, or it wasn't just that the system was vulnerable. We're not just talking about procedural violations. We're actually showing you the thieves breaking into Fort Knox. I think this is what makes this movie different and so powerful. With other types of evidence, that, let's just say cyber warfare, you're not a cyber expert, most of you, and I'm not either. We're not competent to evaluate if somebody else is hacking our election. We don't know. We're going to have to defer to somebody else. But I think with this movie, any person who watches it with an open mind is going to see some very bad stuff is going down. There's no innocent explanation for it. If you read PolitiFact, you read AP, their explanations become nonsensical for anyone who's seen the movie. They say things like, well, maybe it's cab drivers going past the drop boxes. One of the articles says that maybe these mules are election workers. Election workers in the middle of the night wearing gloves and not taking ballots out of the box, but dumping them in? So this is the caliber of intellectual opposition we're up against. We can handle it. You can help us get this message out. It will crush the other side. It will put this issue irresistibly on the national agenda, and the GOP will have to do something about it.
Okay, let's go to our next question. Let's get RN03 Desiree lined up while we take an in-person question. Maybe we can get her up on the screen. Let's go to the young lady in the back with the tote bag. You, who is looking around. Yes.
Thank you so much. In keeping with what's been stated earlier, my friends and I watched every single hearing across the nation, some of which were 9 hours long. What's surprising to me tonight is this is an aspect of the mountain that I hadn't been introduced to before regarding the mules. With what some of you have also stated tonight regarding the freedom of speech and the media in this nation, I would like to bring forward the question regarding the media's place in calling elections legally in this country. To note, Arnon Mishkin from Fox News, the analyst who claimed Arizona to be at a 98% count when 2 days later it was stated that it was something closer to 92%, and still called the state of Arizona for President Biden, while several other countries on the East Coast had something like an 8 to 10% advantage for President Donald J. Trump, and nothing was called. My question, to be clear, is it the media's place to make this call in that time frame, especially because the media clearly has a thumb on to our constitutional rights to freedom of speech at this moment?
That's a great question. I think let's throw this question to Eric. Eric can talk about the media for us.
Well, I mean, I honestly think part of what we're seeing, I mean, in the last few years, we have all seen things unravel. We have seen madness unleashed in our country. And we have to be honest. We have seen it. We're not crazy. We know that madness of every kind, cultural Marxism, transgender ideology, it's madness, right? We've also seen all the institutions that even those of which we were somewhat suspicious, but we thought, but you know, maybe it's not the best doctor, but he's not trying to kill me, right? Well, the fact is, we have seen in the last year and a half that media that we would have trusted, even the New York Times, which always leans left, we thought, well, they're still, you know, they're basically journalists with an agenda, but they're still journalists. That has changed. And I think we need to understand that in this new reality, we have to know that the things that once existed, these institutions, whether it's the Ivy League colleges or the New York Times, they are basically dying or dead. And I think we need to come to terms with the fact that it's an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for us to get honest about what has happened. And let's be honest, if things hadn't gotten as bad as they have been, would we have woken up? Would the people that are waking up and doing something, would they be doing those things? In a funny way, I see this as God's mercy on this country. He's waking us up to what has been going on all along. It just finally got so bad, and they overplayed their hand so dramatically that we know that Fox News was corrupt on the night of the election. And we know that spiking the Hunter Biden laptop thing was wicked. It was one of the greatest stories in the history of journalism. And not only didn't they cover it or cover it well, they all colluded in spiking it. They ceased to be journalists. So I see these horrors as an opportunity for we the people to get involved and to undo the things that have been creeping up on us over the decades.
You know, if I were to walk into the office of the New York Times, along with Catherine and Greg tomorrow, and we were to lay out all this geo-tracking evidence, answer all their questions to their complete satisfaction, show them the 4 million minutes of video, or all the video of all the mules, they would look at it, they would be 100% sure that it was valid and authentic, and they would not print one word about it in the paper the next morning. In short, we're dealing with media that's not biased, doesn't even begin to describe it. These are frauds. These are brazen liars. These are people who tell you the opposite of the truth. You have to be on your guard, and it's almost like you're better off believing the exact opposite of what they say. You're going to be closer to the truth, taking what they say, inverting it, and taking that as your starting point. It puts us in an odd position. We need to be more vigilant than we're accustomed to being. We're not used to decoding every sentence we see. We see a newsman, a guy, and all these guys look good, right? Wolf Blitzer looks like he's a guy who's lived life. He's got a serious look, you know, and Chris Wallace the same. But it's a facade. And once you start probing who these guys are, you realize that they're propagandists. They're the same kind of people. If they lived in the Soviet Union, they'd be willing henchmen for the Soviet state. They're apparatchiks. They're frauds. And we should treat them as such.
It's like everything else, right? It's about money, power, and control of these people. And look, the data is immutable. The methodologies are proven, and the video's a silver bullet, but they don't care. You care. 80,000 of you care. We've got to take this to the legislature. We've got to take it to the streets. We've got to take it to other folks. Send this video to your friends. We'll come out. We're getting calls all the time to come to theaters and push this back out there. But this is up to us, folks. Media's utterly not going to help.
Why don't you email anyone you can at Fox News and ask them why they're not covering this? Will you do that? There's only 80,000 of you. Maybe just 60,000 of you. Email Fox News. Ask them why they don't cover this. Maybe they have a legitimate reason. I would like to know because I find it astonishing.
Let's get another question in from our audience here. Let's get the man in the blue collared shirt here in the center with the glasses.
Hello, thank you. Eric, you brought up a great point, and I've said it all along ever since the election night that Arizona was the bat signal. That was the tipping point because what was it, less than an hour after they prematurely called Arizona, Georgia shut down, followed by everybody else. And the fix was in. So I think that was the trigger, or as I say, the bat signal.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's hop to another question. Let's get the man in the purple shirt here.
Yes, hi. Thank you for everything you guys have done. My name is Sergio Arellano. I'm a first-generation American, son of immigrants from Mexico, and an Army combat veteran. Thank you. Now, being from the Latino community, we testified back in 2014 about the ballot harvesting and the advantage being taken of the Latino neighborhood, how they're coming after our senior citizens and they're confusing them because they have access to all their voter data, their addresses, their date of birth, and their ballot harvesting actively in our community. It's thanks to the good work on your guys' behalf and also Gary Snyder and David Lara in Arizona who took actual video of ballot harvesters in Yuma County and provided those witnesses that you saw in this video today. My question to you is, when can we get you guys back in Arizona down to the Nogales border, the Douglas border, where this is rampant, especially in the Tucson community?
Throw that to Greg.
David, Gary, and I met at a restaurant in Yuma County just after the election, and it was more than just the video that Gary took. It was a story. It was a story that they wove of absolute corruption that now, as we look back at the story told to me that day by these two men and what we've seen all over the country, it's the same exact set of corruption. They look at it a little bit different way. It's a little bit of a twist here in Georgia. It's different here. It's different in Philadelphia. It's slightly different, but it's always the same thing. These people are after money, power, and control. They will do everything and anything they can do to cheat. We're going to be going to the Texas border. We're going to be coming back here and working with you guys. And we're going to continue to support y'all through everything. And he makes a great point. Gary Snyder and David Lara are the real heroes in this story.
Yes, anyone who comes forward really is a hero. Let's get one of our virtual callers on the screen, maybe while we call on an in-person, but anyone in the back, just feel free to pick a Zoom caller. I'm not sure exactly if they got the last one, but let's pull up someone onto the screen. All right, let's hear from James. You are a little bit, says we the people. I'll let you read the rest, but what's your question, James? I'm not sure if you know that you're on the screen. Maybe while you're thinking, I will go to an in-person. Let's go to the woman in the pink shirt in the front, and then we'll try to get back to our Zoom caller.
So I think one of the most important things that all of us need to concentrate on is that this is not just a Democratic problem. The reason that Republicans are keeping quiet is because Republicans have either benefited or been involved.
Yes. Yes.
So we have to be willing to say, no, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat. If you're cheating, we're coming after you.
Yes.
What can we do as people? What can we do in our communities? I have volunteered to be a poll watcher, greeter here in the state of Nevada. But what can we do aside from that to say, we're coming after you? We love our country. We don't love a party. We love the United States, and we love the Constitution of the United States. So tell me, what can we do?
These are insurgencies, folks. And the only way to counter an insurgency is with a counterinsurgency. Go to truethevote.org, sign up. We'll divvy everything up and try to figure out who's going to do what. People that want to work in the polls, people that just want to help, people that want to contact their legislators, we'll support that. We'll do anything that we can do. We've got to get these rolls clean. That's the most important thing we can do. With dirty voter rolls, that's the heart and soul of every single thing that's going on here. They've got to clean those rolls up. So that's one clear thing. The second thing is we're going to establish those counterinsurgencies in communities all over this country. We describe this as a 1,000-front war. We have to have 1,000 counterinsurgencies, and we've got to establish them. We've got to get people supporting us. People of different, backgrounds, skill sets, everything to work with us to try to fight back with this thing on the ground. While Catherine's team's putting people to work, training people, getting these rolls clean, and doing the things that need to be done. I guarantee you that Catherine Engelbrecht will lead this thing forward. Just join her, go to truethevote.org, sign up, join her, and we'll win.
May I add just a line, and this is actually quoting Catherine, but unfortunately we took this out of the movie. We need surveillance on all the drop boxes. And it's not hard to do, and with technology, why not? Every parking lot has surveillance, but it's not an accident that a lot of states didn't do it. They said they would, the election rules require it, and yet they didn't do it. Putting pressure on your officials to have these boxes monitored. I mean, hey, if they're not going to monitor a drop box, I mean, I don't know if this is, Catherine, you can tell us if you can do this. I'd head down there in my SUV and turn on my iPhone, and I'll spend some time hanging out there. But certainly there's no, I can't think of a good reason not to have surveillance. Is there one, Catherine, for these drop boxes?
No, there's no good reason to not have surveillance. And to your point, look, there are going to be states that are going to still have these drop boxes, and they're not going to have surveillance. And it's going to fall to us to say, how badly do we want an honest election? Because if we want an honest election, then we're going to have to stick together and figure out how to provide surveillance on those drop boxes, and maybe we can help to figure out how to live stream surveillance on those drop boxes and shine a big, glaring light on the problem. So there's a lot of ways to do this, and I know this question has been asked again and again, and it's because it's the central question that is, itching at all of us. What can we do? There is so much that we can do, but it requires flipping the thinking to waiting for other people to do it, to figuring out how in your local election you can engage. There are so many ways. Find them, join with others, and you will be shocked at how quickly this thing turns around, because nothing can stop an engaged electorate, because that makes for a united America, frankly. So we're on the good side of this. We just have to stick together.
Great. Okay, let's take another question. Why don't we get one from our Zoom caller? I see we have our caller back up. Why don't you get started? I believe this is Desiree up on our screen. So what is your question for our audience here?
Hi. First, thank you, Dinesh, and everybody for all your hard work. I really appreciate it. My question is, if we're not going to see any prosecution of these mules, when will we see some sort of accountability? That responsible party, those payers, the ones who sign the checks, when are they going to go down? This is some serious evidence. We know where the money comes from with the black monies, with the Soros foundations, the open society things. When are we going to get accountability for that is my question.
That's a great question. Is anyone in particular wanting this question?
Let me start, and maybe, Greg, you can pick it right up. The first thing I want to say is that very often we use the phrase voter fraud, which implies that the voter is somehow producing some fraud. What you see in this movie isn't really voter fraud, it's election fraud. It's organized. Somebody has pulled all this together. Now, again, it doesn't mean there's a single Don Corleone. In fact, in my view, the Democrats have been doing voter fraud of this sort since the 19th century. I mean, immigrants come off the boat, there's a bunch of Democratic officials to meet them. hey, listen, here's a ballot. You sign over here, we'll fill it out, and here's some money for a bottle of liquor, or go meet my friend Al, he'll give you a job on the dock. And this was going on in the days of Tammany Hall. What changes in 2020, this type of fraud, which absentee ballot fraud, if you will, a mail-in fraud, which was a relatively small part of the election, now became the norm. And so the fraudsters could ramp up 50-fold, and that's what they did. That's what you saw in this movie. The volume of fraud becomes huge.
In places like Wisconsin, for example, we don't have much hope in Milwaukee, but Green Bay and Racine were in direct communication with the sheriff's offices in those communities. And so we're super excited about that. These guys that I was just talking about in Yuma County, Arizona, their work has resulted in already a few convictions and some other folks that are on the line here. And in fact, we believe they're starting to roll over, and we hope that that's going to find its way up the pile. In places like Georgia, it's a little more puzzling, right? I personally presented this to the governor's staff in Georgia in the end of May in 2021. They chose to do nothing. For 6 months, they told us they couldn't do anything. Donald Trump name-checked Catherine at a rally at the end of September. The next couple days later, the head of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation went down to the FBI where the data was actually living. An encouraging sign, right? Wrong. What they really went down there for was to dig into the metadata inside of our research, pull out my name, pull out the name of some of my analysts, and then publish it in the AJC. So that's what we're dealing with in Georgia. We are optimistic that the Secretary of State seems to be taking an interest in our complaints. But this is a slow process. We're hopeful, we're optimistic that Arizona piece has resulted in a very substantial inquiries that have come from both the Federal Bureau of Investigation as well as the Arizona Attorney General's office just in the last few weeks. So it's slow but sure. It's very difficult. If I could take a point of personal privilege, watching this video, watching 4 million minutes of video is mind-blowingly difficult. Our lead analyst, John David Phillips, has spent literally thousands of hours just looking at this video, turning it back, looking at it again, looking at it again. But Bruce, whoever on your team pixelated that dog in the dog video, that's the greatest cinematic hat tip in the history of film. Yeah. So just know that all of us love that, and even President Trump mentioned it to me the other day where we were walking out after the...
They pixelated the dog.
Yeah, we were walking out after the thing was over, and President Trump said, "So what's up with the dog?" Said,
well, that dog has
I
friends.
thought I saw that exact same dog outside the studio.
Hey,
I think the dog may be on the premises.
Yeah, maybe we can turn that dog over to Kemp and tell him that tell him that's the informant. Anyway,
well,
that was great.
Let me make a quick point about Raffensperger. He has a chance to be a real hero. It's hard for him. Why? Because right after the election, he declared it was secure. You remember he got into that verbal spat with Trump. He was lionized by the media as a hero. So for him to say, I was the sheriff, and a major heist was going on right under my nose, and I was too dumb to recognize any of it, this is not easy. I think this is a little bit of that inertia on the part of a man of pride to admit that he got completely suckered, that the Democrats outwitted him, they got a consent decree he should never have signed, and then they basically robbed the bank right under. But nevertheless, as a patriot, I'm just calling on him to recognize it's not about him, there's more at stake here. And he is actually, precisely because he was built up by the media into this kind of hero of election integrity, savior of democracy, for that guy to look at the evidence and come out and start pursuing these investigations and then with subsequent arrests, this would be a total game changer.
And let's just say he better do the right thing. Because if he doesn't do the right thing, we're going to come after these people. This is called corruption. We need men and women of honor representing us. And if you're not a man or a woman of honor and virtue, willing to do the right thing and pay a price, because sometimes you got to pay a price. If you're not that person, get out, resign, or we will throw you out because you don't deserve to represent the American people.
Definitely. I saw a question in the comments from Suzanne Haynes, and it was interesting. She was talking about, these mail-in drop boxes. These were kind of started, or at least, put in least in many places because of COVID. This was funded partially by Zuckerberg and others. COVID, it's past. I guess there's always going to be some new virus. They're always going to come up with something. But let's just say that was a temporary situation. Why do we still need these mail-in drop boxes? Why can't people go in person, vote in person? There's one-day voting. We find out who the winner is. Like normal, you request an absentee ballot if needed. Does someone perhaps want to talk about this COVID excuse, Catherine?
Oh, I mean, that's what it was. It was a COVID excuse. And there were hundreds of lawsuits and changes in state processes, and we all sort of just watched it sort of slack-jawed, like, wait, what? What's happening? We're not going to look at signatures, and postmarks aren't going to matter, and you can submit your ballot 3 days after the election, and, but this has been going on. We saw it in rare form in 2020. This has been going on year upon year and cycle upon cycle, inch by inch by inch. And we have allowed the media to tell us that photo voter identification is racist, and that to not have early election for a month before Election Day is somehow denying people the opportunity to vote. Let me tell you, we are the only industrialized country in the world that does what we do. At this point, Afghanistan is doing retinal scans when you go in to vote. Everybody has photo voter identification. Most countries have one election day. We have to begin to understand how far to the left this process has been pulled, and then work to pull it back. And that's a key, because you see this, the countries that have one-day elections and that are very hands-on, that are voting with paper ballots, for example, that requires an engaged citizenry to help support that. If the citizenry is not engaged, then the only thing that the government can do is hire it out. And guess who they're hiring out? People that are there for a check and not there to defend liberty. So it takes a mindset difference, and it's going to take time to peel all this back. It didn't happen overnight. A lot happened in 2020, and unfortunately a lot was codified post-2020 that now is the norm. But we can start now peeling it back and being engaged. And again, I know I just keep coming back to it. There's reason for great hope if we stick together and keep pushing. But we have to push. Otherwise, this is all going to be, it's all going to be swept under the rug and forgotten by 2022.
And I think a great way to keep our citizenry engaged, like Catherine's saying, is for people to watch this film. Because if people don't know about 2000 Mules, if they don't watch this movie, then they're not going to be convicted. They're not going to be convinced about what happened in 2020. They're not going to spread the word. And ultimately, they won't hold our actual officials accountable. So if you're looking into a politician and they haven't mentioned anything going on with 2020, then that's a red flag. There are honestly only a few who are really hard on this issue. So let's go to another one of our in-person people here. Let's go to the lady in the black dress over here.
Thank you for coming to Nevada. Unfortunately, this is one of the worst states for voter fraud. And one thing that troubles me is that recently they legalized ballot harvesting. What can we do to say no?
I think one of the things that needs to happen, and this is a not so direct answer, but it's super important. Ballot harvesting and ballot trafficking in this case is much, much, much more difficult if the voter rolls are clean. We built an app that that Catherine and her team have recently launched, IV3, iv3.us. And it allows, I've seen a number of questions go across the screen up here. What's our legal strategy? What are we going to do? Where are we going to hire the lawyers? What are the lawyers going to do? Let me tell you something, folks. Forget the lawyers. They're not going to help. IV3 allows everyday citizens to log in and challenge illegal voters on the app and do it automatically. So it allows citizens to engage and do it. Somebody else just wrote, well, what can I do? I'm disabled and I'm home all the time. Log into IV3, iv3.us, clean the voter rolls. Whatever the fools do with ballot trafficking and all of that, those are fights, that will be, no doubt waging for decades to come. But if we clean these voter rolls, we will create at least an opportunity for a free, fair, and legal election.
Thank you.
If I can just highlight a point that's in the movie, but this is where the left is going to go. They really can't continue with the silly mantra of this being the most secure election. So we're going to start hearing less about that. You're going to be hearing more sophisticated attempts to explain all this, such as, this is just vote harvesting, and some states do permit it. Here you need to know the distinction between vote harvesting, which is basically your ability to give somebody else your ballot and have them return it. It's allowed in about 26 states. In the states that we're looking at, places like Georgia and Arizona, you can't give your ballot to anyone and have them return it. You can give it to a family member if you're in a confined facility to a caregiver, and that's it. What you're seeing in this movie is not vote harvesting, it's paid ballot trafficking. Paid ballot trafficking is legal in no state. Because once money enters the process, you have questions of bribery. Essentially, the process of the vote has been contaminated. Now, the left will then say, wait a minute, could some of these have been legal votes that are just delivered illegally? Well, once the process has been contaminated beyond a point, it's no longer a legal vote. I mean, let me give you a simple example, which doesn't even involve trafficking. If I go in to vote, I go behind the curtain, I'm given a ballot, I'm about to cast my vote, and then I say, hey guys, listen, time out. I gotta go home. I gotta run an errand, I'm gonna take my ballot with me, I'll be back in an hour, I'll fill it out and I'll put it in the box. That vote would be disqualified. Why? Because who knows what happens once I've taken the vote outside the supervision of the balloting place. So even though it's a legal vote, I'm an eligible voter, I'm actually casting the ballot. But nevertheless, by contaminating the chain of custody, by contaminating the process, I have destroyed confidence in the legitimacy of that vote. This is the point to realize here. Everything that's shown in the movie is illegal. And so those votes are fraudulent and cannot and must not be counted. End of story.
I'd just like to add one other thing, because when your state does something like that, it's a little overwhelming to think, well, it's the new law of the state. So as a practical matter, what can you do? And there is the distinction between money changing hands that changes everything, but that's after, the horse has already left the barn. So what I would encourage in your state is for your candidates and your party and you local citizen-led groups to educate voters as well as you can, and there are many ways to do that, door to door if you need to, about the hazards of this new standard of ballot harvesting and what it means to the sanctity of the person who chooses to hand that ballot over. They will have no certainty that that ever reaches its intended spot. Educate before. So many people that we talk with Americans are trusting people. They can't, it's overwhelming to believe that some of the things that we've shown on the screen are really happening. So get out there and educate. An informed electorate will change things, and then you have a chance to pull it back in the next legislative session, which should be done. But in this current cycle, you got to educate.
Okay, we're going to take one final question. So let's go to one of our audience members. Let's go to our purple sweater friend. The lady right over here in the purple sweater. I think you had your hand up, ma'am? No, not anymore. Okay, never mind. Let's go to the man right next to her who's waving his hand, standing.
Thank you very much. I have to thank Eric, Dinesh, Greg, Catherine, you were in San Luis. Thank you. Y de la comunidad hispana de San Luis, muchísimas gracias. Se los agradezco sinceramente What's happening is like you saw in the movie, the cartels are holding the Hispanic community hostage. Our communities are held hostage by the cartels, el cartel de los cazabotos. Thank you for paying attention, taking the time to go, video. You have no idea, 22 years of fighting this, and now somebody paid attention. We need your help. Thank you. The other thing is, and several people mentioned this, and I think everybody has to pay attention to one thing. The problem, the big problem that you don't know about, where the money's coming from, the deep state, and there's Republicans. Deep Republican money is financing the voter fraud. Yuma County is corroded with Republican money financing the ballot harvesters. You have Sergio, you just talked right now. Sergio's a war veteran. You have a veteran, Latino, Mexicano, who gave his life to fight for the right to vote. We have Barry. I mean, my God, I can go on and on and on. What I'm trying to say is we need help. Latino communities were held hostage by the cartels. It is the same thing as the drugs, just like the lady said. I want to thank, my God, there's so many things, so many people I want to thank because this movie is finally putting the spotlight of where the problem is. And we have Gary. 22 years of fighting this would have amounted to nothing, zero, until Gary Snyder, who's running for Senate, finally he popped up and he helped me. Greg, Catherine, you were there, right? And my God, through the vote, Dinesh, Eric, folks, you have no idea. This is deep. 22 years of fraud, corruption, coercion, manipulation, intimidation. I mean, it is beyond what everybody thinks here. But the problem is, stop and think, there's deep Republican money financing this. It is favors, corruption, contracts, everything that you can imagine. Do not trust your local GOP members. You have to question everybody and everything. And Catherine, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong here. The evidence that we submitted in Arizona was right after the primary in 2020.
That's right.
Mark Brunovich could have stopped the fraud.
They cheat each other more than they cheat us.
Sorry,
we
but
handed
guys,
over.
we're running out of time a little bit. Do you have a question to end with?
Let me
really
sum up, if I may.
The only thing I want to end with is the only person besides you folks is the only person that helped us is Jim Lehman. That is it. Thank you very much. Gracias a todos. Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Guys, let me close this by saying, first of all, thank you to our live audience. Many of you have traveled a long way to get here. We really appreciate you. And man, 80,000 people around the country, maybe around the world. This is unbelievable. We see some of you. I wish we could see all of you, but we thank you for your interest in this and your interest in this movie. When Catherine and Greg came to our house, Debbie and me, we looked at this evidence and I realized it was of a caliber, it was completely different than anything we've seen before. It doesn't cover all the fraud, but it covers a big area of fraud, and the fraud it covers is enough. And we convinced Catherine and Greg, and I hope we made the right decision, to say, look, let's put this, you have all this rocket fuel, let's put it in a missile called a movie, and then the movie itself becomes a kind of weapon, a deadly weapon to get the message out there far beyond our wildest imaginations. And this event today is one example of that. So I want to urge you, if you will, to become a kind of missionary, if you will, for this message and for this movie. It is our best work in telling this story. I honestly believe that ordinary people, the ordinary Democrat doesn't want to win an election by cheating. So if we can get this message and put it in front of the American people, that alone would have huge cataclysmic consequences. That would be an essential first step to fixing this problem, bringing us back to the country that Reagan talked about so movingly when he spoke in 1984 in that poignant phrase, morning in America. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you and good night.
Thank you everyone so much for being here. We really appreciate it, your time. Make sure to watch 2000 Mules, spread the word to all of your friends. Go to 2000mules.com. Make sure everybody knows all about this film. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight.